Husband admits I am ugly. I am an unattractive woman, objectively. I've always been this way, and while I have accustomed myself to it, it nonetheless remains a daily fact that being an ugly woman sucks. I met my husband 4 years ago, and he is greatest thing that's ever happened to me. He has always and frequently told me I'm beautiful, and somehow sounded honest, without sounding like my mother, like someone without another option to answer. Last night, Saturday, he had a group of friends over to our home. They meet several times a month to hang out, catch up, and play games. He has known most of these guys since high school. I was upstairs in the kitchen preparing a drinks and snacks when, and was able to hear them in the basement and began to eavesdrop, which I know was rude, but it wasn't really intentional. I realized they were talking about me. A couple of guys were teasing my husband about me, specifically about my looks. I could tell it was supposed to be funny. It was not. There was a point where one of them referred to me as a troll, and my husband blew up, started shouting, "Listen, shut the fuck up. I know that my name is ugly, but shut up, she makes me happy." Does your bimbo of the week do that, Jim? Dave, how long has it been since we've hung out and you haven't bitched about your wife? Not real names. He went on for a while, defending me. But all I could hear was, "I know she's ugly. I know she's ugly. I know she's ugly." Again and again in my head. It just broke me, I don't know why. I've always known I'm unattractive. But he isn't supposed to be. He tells me I'm beautiful. So sincerely and consistently. I'd started to actually believe he thought that. I started to cry and ran into a shower so no one could hear me. When I came out an hour later, everyone had gone home, far earlier than normal. I went to bed, and then haven't spoken to him all day today, but I think I've been able to avoid letting him know I'm upset or avoiding him. I know rationally that what he said was true and sweet, and that I sound happy he loves me and not my body, but it doesn't seem to matter. I just want to be pretty. God, I feel so shallow. I've been crying all day. What do I say to him? Part of me wants to call him a liar, to scream and yell and cry, while the other part just wants to run away and never have to talk to him again and acknowledge that even the greatest man I will ever meet can't find me attractive. Update. First off, I'd just like to say thanks. Just wow. Over the last 2 days, I've had literally hundreds of messages and PMs. You guys rock. Seriously, look at that thread. That's gotta have one best positivity and sweetness to meanness and jerks ratios on all of Reddit, like ever. You guys knocked it out of the park for me. I'm still figuring out why. So yesterday, after getting a barrage of support from you guys, on my phone every couple minutes non-stop all day, I decided to try and confront my husband over what I'd overheard. After we were both home from work, I told him I needed to talk. I told him I'd overheard him and his friends, and he immediately started to apologize for them saying they were jerks and assholes, and that I should have told him I'd heard. I had to stop him to let me get a word in and tell him it wasn't his friends so much as it was what he said. When I told him what he said, his whole tone changed. I could tell wasn't expecting to be blamed. I had had the whole conversation planned out. I wanted to explain how it made me feel, how I thought he really was attracted to me, and how betrayed it made me feel to hear him that behind my back. But I just started to cry, and couldn't really communicate what I wanted to say very well. He was awesome though, and just held me, and then after a minute started to speak like he was reading right out of the nicest comments in the original thread, telling me he was just angry and didn't speak very well. That he really does find me attractive even if the world doesn't, and his friends don't. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. I calmed down pretty quick. I'd basically cried myself out the day before. He took me to his computer and showed me an email he sent to all of his friends on Sunday. I wish I could copy-paste it now, but he basically called all his friends assholes, said they'd crossed the line from good-natured trash talk to just being assholes, and then continued going far beyond. He said that, for time indefinite, they'd have to find another host. We're no longer welcome in my home. He actually said, "My name's home." I thought that would make it sound like I was ordering him around being a bitch, but he said he just wanted to empathize how wrong what they were doing was. Seeing him stand up for me again made me happy, especially seeing me do it without talking bad about me, helping me believe it really was just heat of the moment, bad word choice. He told me to wait in the room and left, coming back with a folder. He said he was going to give me this for Christmas, but that he'd get me something else. I tried to say no, but he insisted. It was plane tickets and brochures. He set up a trip in early January to this spa hotel resort thing in British Columbia. It was pretty mind-blowing, but I realized that it had to be several $1,000s he'd spent. We budget pretty thoroughly. He shouldn't have been able to spend that without me noticing. I asked where he got the money, and he said he'd been planning this for more than a year and saving all the money assigned to his weekly spending money, and collecting where I wouldn't notice, change from groceries, etc. When I say that sometimes I'm not sure I deserve him, understand that I'm not having a crisis I need help dealing with. He's just really awesome. He's taking me out for dinner, so I have to go, but I'll be on again tonight. Comment. Can you imagine being invited to someone's home and being like, "Lol dog, your wife is ugly"? What classless jerks Aida for canceling the plans for Thanksgiving after my parents called my brother's baby their first grandchild. I, 32F, have been with my wife Ava, 34F, for 8 years now, but we've been married for 5. She was a single mom of 3 kids when we started dating. She had 2 daughters, now 10 and 12, and a son, now 16. I've watched these kids grow up. I've read the bedtime stories, done bath time, the first days of school, PTA meetings, all of it. I very much consider them to be my kids, and they've been calling me mom for almost 6 years now. My brother Ivan, 28M, just had a baby girl with his fiancée Sarah, 27F. I love my niece and my kids adore their cousin. My kids have been the only grandchildren on my side of the family since Ava and I got together, and there's never been a moment where the kids and my wife were treated like they didn't belong. My brother is their uncle. My mom and dad are their nana and pop. The kids see my family as their family, and I always thought that my family felt the same way about them. The kids and I were over at my brother's house just hanging out, and my parents ended up dropping by with gifts for my niece. Ivan laughed when he saw the toys and told our mom and dad that they were going to end up spoiling her rotten. My mom said since my niece is their first grandchild, of course, they have to spoil her. My kids were sitting in the living room with all of us, and my youngest daughter looked hurt when she realized what my mother said. My son and my 12-yo didn't fully react to it, but I could tell it bothered the both of them too. Sarah spoke up and said, "Oh, you mean first grandbaby, not first grandchild." My dad shook his head and replied that my niece was their first grandchild. I didn't want my kids to keep sitting there and listening to that, so I handed my son my keys and told him to wait in the car with his sisters. When they were gone, I asked my parents why the hell they'd say that my kids weren't their grandchildren, and my mom said they couldn't be their grandchildren because they weren't really my children. My wife and I were going to be hosting Thanksgiving at our house this year, but I told my parents that if they didn't view my kids as their family, then they could just host a meal at their own house with their real family, while I spent the holiday with mine. I left before they could say anything else to me, and my wife and I have reiterated to the children that they will always be my kids, and I will always be their other mom, regardless of our DNA. My brother is pissed at me now because he thinks I reacted too harshly, and that I should try to see where my parents are coming from. My mom texted saying that she and my dad love the kids, but they still aren't their grandchildren, and she hopes that we can come to understand that because she doesn't want this to ruin my niece's first Thanksgiving. I haven't replied back. I meant what I said, but I'm worried that maybe I'm reacting too harshly. ETA info. I adopted all 3 of the kids about 4 years ago, so they aren't just my parents' step-grandchildren. Even if I hadn't legally adopted them, they'd still be my kids in my eyes. Edit number 2. My wife's parents don't have a relationship with the kids. When my wife came out, they pretty much stopped speaking with her entirely. Their bio dad is not involved and neither is his family. He lost his rights to the children before Ava and I started dating. The 10-yo has never met him, the 12-yo doesn't remember him, and the 16-yo wants nothing to do with him. My parents wanted the kids to call them Nana and Pop. I didn't make the kids start calling them that. Relevant comments. The worst part of it for me is that they said it in front of them. I'd still be upset knowing they thought it, but the look on my youngest daughter's face when she heard my mother say that just broke my heart. I tend to go mama bear whenever I even think someone has stepped out of line with the kids, so I was worried that maybe I was doing too much in my reaction. My brother still feels like I should talk it out with them, but I don't know that I could forgive it honestly. I've been out as a lesbian since I was a teenager, but I always sort of had this idea that I'd never find love and settle down. Then I met Ava and those kids, and my whole point of view changed. 6 months into dating Ava, I realized I was keeping snacks in my bag for the kids lol. I guess maybe my parents could have just gotten used to the idea of me never getting married or having a family, but they never made it seem like they weren't happy for me when I told them about Ava and our kids. They said they wanted the kids to call them Nana and Pop, but I haven't spoken to them since this whole thing happened, so I don't know if they still want the kids to call them that. The kids aren't exactly jumping at the bit to see them now though, so I doubt they'd call them those names anytime soon. November 12, 2022. Comment. You can put as much emphasis on DNA as you want to, but at the end of the day, those are my children. It doesn't matter that I didn't grow them myself, that they never came out of me, that they don't share my genetics. They call me their mom, and that's what I am to them. If I ever had gotten pregnant and made a baby myself, I know I'd love that kid the same way I do my other three. Being a mom is more than making a child. It's being there for all the moments after. I'm fortunate enough to have been allowed those moments and to have been given the title of mother. Yes, biology is a thing, and yes, I know DNA means a lot to some people, but it doesn't matter to me. It wasn't some happenstance of nature that allowed me to be their other mom. I am their other mom because I chose to be, and because they, and my wife of course, chose to let me. It's not a substitution, because I don't believe that there is one default or correct way of creating a family. Even gay penguins are out there adopting each other's eggs. If Mother Nature has the penguins doing it, I'd argue that my family structure fits the bill of naturally occurring. Just fine. OP was voted NTA Update Post, November 17, 2022. Hi, I thought I'd just leave you all with an update here since it doesn't look as though things are going to change anytime soon. My wife and I talked with all three of the kids separately and asked them what they wanted to do for Thanksgiving, if they wanted my parents there, if they still wanted to see them. My son and oldest daughter have made it very clear that they are mostly upset at my parents for hurting their younger sister's feelings, and they felt that if my parents apologized to her and tried to make it up to her, then they'd be okay with seeing them still. My 10-year-old took it the hardest out of the three. For her, they're the only grandparents she's ever known, and this whole thing really crushed her. My wife and I explained to her, and to all of the kids, that none of this was her fault, that she didn't cause it, and that we're both equally her moms, and she is equally our kid no matter what DNA says. She told us that she didn't want to talk to my parents, but that she wanted me to make sure they knew that she wasn't mad at them. She was just hurt. I called my dad and told him how hurt my kids were by what was said by him and my mom, and that I would appreciate it if they apologized to the kids for being inconsiderate of their presence and their feelings. My dad said that he and my mother never intended to hurt the kids' feelings, but they can't change the fact that those aren't their grandchildren and that the kids shouldn't be so upset at the truth. I hung up on him. I know I can't make them view my kids as their grandchildren, but the fact that both of my parents are being so inconsiderate of the fact that they seriously upset my children just makes this whole thing even worse. I texted my brother and told him that I was sorry if he felt like he was being put in the middle of something, but as a parent, my priority is my kids, and I won't apologize for protecting them from what I think will hurt them further. I guess Sarah talked to him or something, because he apologized to me and said he'd like for his daughter to have Thanksgiving with her aunts and her cousins. I did also thank Sarah separately for offering my parents an out and trying to salvage the situation. She's a total sweetheart and I love her. Thanksgiving is going to be hosted at my house just without my parents there. It's unfortunate, but like I said, my kids are my priority, and I refuse to have them sit at a table with people who can't even take a minute to show them some empathy or basic kindness. I didn't expect that post to take off the way it did, so I wasn't able to respond to all of you because there were just so many. But I really appreciated all of your feedback and suggestions. Comment. The part that really gets me is, they asked the kids to call them Nana and Pop. I don't get why they would do that, but then not consider them grandchildren. My only guess is that maybe they saw it as close enough. But once a bio-grandchild was born, they didn't need to bother with the make-believe. We have come to the end of our story. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories like this. Tell us what you think about this story in the comments.